The portal giveth and the portal taketh. I think the Badgers have enough depth at tight end right now. Mason Lane joins the Wisconsin Badgers. Let's talk about the new addition and where it puts the Badgers on that depth chart. Plus, the Badgers got to get some guys in the NFL draft. And we're going to talk about what it means for this program that they haven't been able to do that. Locked on Badgers, let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all the everydayers. Thank you for the people who listen and are here and helping us build the community. Really do appreciate all y'all. Let's talk about Mason Lane, a portal tight end commits to the Badgers, kind of taking the place of Tanner Koziel. Let's talk about what that does to the depth chart and just some bigger picture thoughts on the NFL draft and the lack of Badgers being picked in the last several years and what it means for the program and where it highlights where this program has kind of fallen short in some ways. But let's start with the good news here. Let's start with a tight end jumping in. Obviously, the Badgers lost Tanner Koziel. Our Mason Lane joins the program, commits to the Badgers. We're going to talk about his game, who he is, what he's done, how he fits in. That's coming up next. But first,
fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Okay, so who is Mason Lane? I don't know a ton yet, right? There's a few minutes of film I've been able to watch that's out there on Twitter. I recommend everybody go and check it out. But here's the basics. Mason Lane, tight end from Missouri State. 23-game starter, led all FCS tight ends in receiving yards last year. He has one season of eligibility left. He's 6'4", 240 pounds, some speed. He's a guy who looks like he can play in. Here's the thing. When they went and got Tanner Koziel, to be a guy who they could use in the passing game, a guy who they could use his big frame to exploit mismatches, that he could get into the seam, he could stretch the field a little bit. Now, Mason Lane's not as big. He hasn't been as productive. He didn't do it at the D1 level. This is not a one-for-one talent, and I'm not trying to suggest that. But I think he can give you some of what you were hoping with Tanner Koziel in that he's a pass-catching threat. He averaged 17.4 yards per catch. He was a third-team FCS All-American. Again, the skill level is going to have to jump up. But you see the film, pretty long, pretty lanky, runs really well. He looks pretty fluid. And I think this is a guy who can give you a bit of a receiving threat out of that tight end room. And then Tucker Ashcraft is going to be your blocking guy, your inline guy. So whereas with Tanner Koziel, I think you had an obvious starter. This is the alpha. This is the clear guy. That was the vision if it worked out. I think with Mason Lane coming in, you have Lance Mason. I apologize. It's Lance Mason. I don't know why I've been saying Mason Lane. I apologize for that. Lance Mason. So with Lance Mason coming in, I think you have more of a complementary piece to Tucker Ashcraft where he can be more of the vertical threat at tight end. You can get him in space, maybe run some tight end screens to him potentially. And then Tucker Ashcraft can be the guy that blocks. Tucker Ashcraft can be the guy that, does some of the dirty work and still catches passes. So it's, I think, big for the depth chart for the Badgers. It's something that gives them some more versatility there, some more depth there. It gives them something that they maybe don't have in that toolbox that Grimes can go to. Grimes is a guy who definitely wants to use tight ends, who definitely wants to use multiple pieces on the edge, bigger pieces, bigger weapons. So I think it gives you some of that. It's a good pickup. Again, it's not Tanner Koziel didn't work out, but the vision of what Tanner Koziel could have been in this offense, this is not a replacement for that. Lance Mason is not a one-for-one replacement for that. But he can give you some of the pass-catching stuff. You can squint and see the vision here, and I think he helps in that room a little bit. All right, let's see. Yeah, a couple people. Jack Harris says Mason Lane is safety running back. Yep, Lance Mason. Jack Harris says 1 year of eligibility left. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Yeah, I don't know why I was saying Mason Lane. I just got them flipped. But, yeah, Lance Mason. And I appreciate everybody for being here. So, again, from a depth standpoint, he's a valuable piece. 1 year left. I think this is also – I'll give you another one where I think this is nice. I think it's a nice pivot for the staff. The Badgers, you lose a Koziel. You weren't planning on losing him, obviously, because he was one of your big offseason additions. It's a nice pivot to go over and be able to get a Lance Mason, someone who can also step in and probably play a solid role this year. Not to that level of a Koziel, but somebody who can step in and play pretty well. So I think in that sense, it's a nice pivot. I think it's going to be someone that helps the depth. I think it's an important piece. What else do you need to add in the portal? You're still looking at an offensive lineman. Where are the other spots on this roster that you're really worried depth-wise? Tight end was one of them. And this doesn't make the tight end room all conference level. I think it just makes it solid. And that's literally the notes I wrote down. I said, yeah, I think tight end depth is solid now. You have a Lance Mason. You have a Tucker Ashcraft. I think Grant Steck can give you some size there. I think it's solid. You have Nizy Davis coming in this offseason, or in this summer, but I don't think he's probably going to be ready to play. I just think it gets you solid. And then where else on the team do you need to beef up? Because that's really what you're looking for in the portal right now. Where can we add depth? I think running back is a spot you could still look at if you're not comfortable with having 4 guys on scholarship. That's definitely a spot you could look. I think offensive line for sure. We talked about tackle a bunch with Kevin Haywood going down. I think you could have added depth at the offensive line even before Kevin Haywood injury. That's something that we talked about on the show, that depth there not being quite as strong as it should be. So I think that's a spot you could add some depth there. Aside from that, I don't know where your depth is really scary. I actually think cornerback, which I thought would be a spot I'd be more worried about. You get those 2 starters back. You've got Agard behind him. It sounds like Latimer has kind of played really, really well. You like some of the freshmen. I don't think cornerback's a big depth concern anymore. I don't think inside linebacker is, especially with the emergence of a Cooper Catalano. I don't think outside linebacker is. I don't think defensive line is. I don't think receiver is. I think the depth spots that you're looking at in the portal right now, and this kind of fixes that depth at tight end. And I'm excited to dive into more film on Lance. I haven't been able to see enough of him yet. But I think when you look at the depth spots, it's really just, do you want another running back? And I'm curious if people feel comfortable with 4 scholarship guys, if that's good, if you would like them to add somebody. I'm in the boat where I kind of would like to see if they could add a physical upperclassman veteran, just a solid, steady guy that if you needed to give some carries to, the wheels wouldn't fall off. I think that would make sense. And then offensive line, if you could get 1 or 2 guys there, that would be tremendous. Rick Tange says he had solid numbers last year. We need all the tight end receptions we can get. I agree. Yeah, Pavel says it's Lance Mason. I know. I messed it up at the beginning of the show, but yeah, I think this tight end room has been bereft of production and receptions and, quite frankly, high-level talent for several years now. So this feels like a spot that you just keep adding to until you figure it out. And I think this is definitely Lance Mason piece coming in that's going to help you there. All right, we're going to take a quick break. I want to come back and talk about the NFL draft. The Badgers haven't had a first-round pick since 2017. That is crazy. And when you look at the struggles this team has had recently, it starts there. There hasn't been enough talent. Let's talk about that coming up next. Plus, whatever else y'all want to talk about, anything you want to talk about, throw it in the chat. Basketball, football, whatever it is, we'll just chop it up a little bit tonight. It's kind of a late night edition of Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show. Coming up next, over at today's episode, brought to you by Supply House. Supply House is phenomenal. If you need HVAC, plumbing, cooling, heating, electrical, you can get all of that over on Supply House. And that's something we've been using a lot because we've been doing our renovation projects on our house. Our upstairs, our bathroom is going through a massive renovation right now, which is taking forever. But if you need those supplies, you can get them from a site made for skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're doing any of that stuff or more, this is a reliable place to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory over 200,000 parts, 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. If you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks, dedicated phone lines, free shipping, discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals already taking advantage. Now it is your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Alrighty, let's jump back into this. So, first of all, the NFL draft has been awesome. I love watching the draft every year. But it has been since 2017, right? We're in 2025. This is the 2025 draft, right? And it has been since 2017 since the Badgers have had a first-round pick. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. And you look at our roster last year, look at our team last year. That's what a 5-7 team looks like. There's no stars. There's no guys that the NFL looks at and salivates over. There's no guys that the NFL looks at and says we can build an offensive line around that, or that is a a big ticket running back or tight end or receiver or defensive end or outside linebacker, all those places that were just pouring talent into the NFL at a high level. That's the thing with those 2017, those mid 2015-ish teams. Those teams were loaded with NFL talent. And we can talk all we want about Wisconsin needs to get back to being a grinders, and Wisconsin needs to get back to being physical, and Wisconsin needs to get back to, evaluating and culture. You got to go back to finding some studs. I mean, ultimately, that's what it is. You can beat Ohio State without Ohio State's roster, but you got to have a couple stars. You got to have a couple guys that are game breakers. You got to have a couple guys who the NFL looks at and says, I'm going to place one of my premium picks on that guy. TJ Watt, Ryan Ramczyk, JJ Watt, Kevin Zeitler, Melvin Gordon, right? Like, go down the list. Like, we all know the names. It's been too long. And you look at the last 2 years, and we can talk about coaching, and we talk about Tressel, and we can talk about adjustments, and we can talk about Fickle. They haven't had enough talent. It's as simple as that. And that's on the coaching staff for sure. It's on the previous one and this one. It's on the development. It's on the training. It's on everything. And they got to get back to that. So you look at this roster now, who on this year's team in 2025 do you think could be a first or second round pick? Again, you get to a point where you start to scratch your head and say, man, I don't know. Right? I don't know who on this year's upcoming team could be a first round pick, could be a second round pick. Could it? I think Vinny Anthony is going to get picked. I think Jaden Ballard could parlay a really good year into getting picked. Dylan Jones eventually could get picked. I don't know if there's a lineman this year that is going to fall into that realm. I don't know if there's a defensive lineman this year that's going to fall into that realm. Outside linebacker, probably not this year. Inside, I think Allegro is going to eventually be an NFL guy. I don't know if there's a secondary guy right now. So again, you start to look at this roster and say, man, where's the star power? Where's the star talent? And I don't know, maybe I'm off base on this. Maybe I'm completely off base, but it was just a thought I had watching the draft today. P says, going back to the running backs, he's good with 4. He's good with 4 scholarship guys. And I always love though, and P's in the chat, man. He says, give it to Yak more. Yeah, I think you're fine because I say I think you're fine. Also saying that I would like one more. I would just sleep a little better at night if we had an extra body in there just in case, because we've already seen Darian Dupree get dinged up. We've seen some of these pieces get dinged up before, but if you're going with 4, knowing that Jackson Aker could also get reps, that essentially gives you 5. You're all right there. You are all right there. I get this sentiment that we're all right there. Jack Herrera says, Grimes always talks about NFL-style offense, but what NFL team do you think his offense most closely emulates? Oh, that's a great question. Let me think on that. I don't have a great answer off the top of my head. And if somebody in the chat has a great one, I would love to pause this, take this question, archive it, and do a full show on this, because I think this is a great question. I'm gonna pause this one and maybe get back to it in this show if I think of something. But if not, I'm going to keep that one for later. Rick Tane says Jonathan Taylor should have been a first rounder. I agree. You see a guy like Omarion Hampton go in the first round in this year's draft. Yeah. Jonathan Taylor should have been a first rounder. I believe that draft was deeper. This was not a great draft. It wasn't a great quarterback draft. So I think you saw some running backs go up a little higher on the board than they normally would. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor was absolutely first round talent. Jack Herrera also says, watching the spring showcase kind of reminded me of a Fleurs game plan with Malik Willis at quarterback. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, they definitely changed what they did there with Willis. And you should emphasize a little more movement and some simplicity there and try to keep the defense off balance. There's a couple coordinators that will work with eye candy to keep defenses off balance. I just think it's going to be very similar to what we've done in the past with a little bit more of a mobility element at quarterback. And that's going to be nice to see, quite frankly. Posa. Yeah, P says Posa could be the next NFL guy. I think Posa is interesting. I wonder size-wise on the NFL size, he feels a little small, maybe. I think a really good college player for sure. He's going to have to get a little bigger. Coach Max says, here I am, just got home from the draft, and you're live, Ryan. Came from where my NFL reactions tuned into you. What's up, Coach Mac? That's a good dude. Got to see him in Camp Randall. Really good dude. Coach Mac, let me know. Are you good with 4 scholarship running backs? I'm curious if you would like another one. Coach Mac says Shanahan-style offense, West Coast. I thought about that. but Shanahan, I think, uses a little bit more timing stuff than Grimes is going to do. But yeah, Shanahan loves to use an H-back, fullback. He loves to use the tight ends. There's definitely familiarity there. He'll use jet sweeps. He'll use motion to get the receivers involved. Yeah, you can definitely see it. Now, the thing with Shanahan is he doesn't really veer towards mobility at the quarterback spot very often. He did once with Trey Lance, but for the most part, he prefers more of a mobile, quick decision, or not an immobile guy, but more of a quick decision maker at the quarterback spot. You think back to obviously Garoppolo, Brock Purdy now. Purdy can move, but I think the mobility quarterback element is something that Grimes would use more than a Shanahan, but I don't hate the Shanahan one. Coach Max says, need another tight end or running back. I would honestly like another tight end as well, besides the commitment today. Yeah, it's pretty much where I'm at. I don't think you need another running back, but I would like one. And then I actually think you're okay at tight end now. I know you and I have talked before. You're not as high in the tight end group, and I get that. And I think that's fair. Yeah, I think they need to show it, but I don't think the depth there is terrible. I think it's enough to be a solid tight end room this season. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Again, wanted to talk about the new tight end commitment. I think it helps with the depth. He has some athleticism. I think he's going to help you in the passing game a little bit if he develops there. I'll say this, he's 240, 6'4", 240. I don't think this is a guy, he looks like he can be a willing blocker when you see some of the film on him. I don't think this is a guy that's going to be a great blocker this year for you, but I think he can catch some balls and then really complement Tucker Ashcraft. So I think there's something there. We're going to wrap it up on Wisconsin. Also, look for a great interview we had with Emilio Agard. That should drop on Monday. I'll just drop a little bit of a hint here. I asked him about Jaden Ballard's speed. Like, how fast is Jaden Ballard really? And Emilio's like, I'll just say this. I'm going to drop a tease. You're going to want to hear his answer about how fast Jaden Ballard really is. That's going to be a good one. On Wisconsin, we will definitely talk later. Appreciate the absolute heck out of all of you. Have a great, great weekend, and we will definitely talk later.